Okay, this is based on our meeting the other week. I just want to put a video out there to show this simulation. Maybe it can be incorporated into a project, and maybe better still, get the kids to or the students to build this simulation as a way of showing that they understand the maths involved. And I'm just going to run the simulation, and I'll give a few comments over the top, but I'm thinking if you could use this in your class, if you do this type of project, you could quite easily press mute and turn the sound off and explain what's going on. So I'll make a start. I've just put all these items out into the scene. They're all going to be used in some way when I press play. So let's just have a quick look at the code. What I've done initially is just to hide all those things, okay, and then move the camera to a position. And if that's something you need help with, if you're not so good at coding, I can give you that code, or make some videos on how to do things. I'm going to just, the crab is going to get some input from the user here. And based on that, that's going to tell me how many towers, how big the tower is going to be and how we're going to build it. So there's no magic here. I've just got a variable called the number of disks, and whatever this crab or user inputs into here, it'll set that variable to 4. And I've just got a series of nested if statements here to help with the code. And this code is just really basic. We're going to move the disk to a certain location, and we're going to wait, then we're going to move the other disk, and so on, so on, so on. And when it comes down to actually doing all the moves in the counting all the moves, well, I need to set another variable here called moves, and I'm going to increment that every time one of those blocks moves. There you go. And the penguin's going to stay the moves. I'm going to move another block, increment that variable called moves, and the penguin's going to stay the moves. So that's what's going to happen behind the scenes. This code is quite simple. Of course, if there are 5 moves, I need to program 5 lines of code, and it gets kind of repetitious, but that's not a bad thing. Once kids understand that, or anyone really, they start looking at ways to improve their programming skill. Like it says all this repetition lends itself to iteration and also recursion, and that can be built into the program, but that's a bit more advanced. And honestly, if we did a sort of project like this and we had them move 4 disks and they had to punch out each line of code, then I would say that's success. Let's have a look. So we're just running the program here. It's executing all those lines of code. Everything was hidden. We've moved the camera. We're slowly adding the bits and pieces to our scene. We've got the 3 locations for the 3 towers. This is kind of simple. I've just removed the towers and I'm just focused on moving the blocks between these 3 positions. Over here, I've got a plus and a minus sign because this is where this crab is asking you now to input some information in here. And just to control that, what I've got here is a few warnings that this variable is initialized to 0. So if we hit the minus sign, we can't go anywhere. We need to, and plus sign, and we can't hit that forever because, like I said, the way I've set this up, I'm looking at lots of lines of code. It's if I write a program for 5 disks, and I don't think that's necessary. We find a better solution at that point to program that in there. So let's just run it with 1 and follow what's going to happen here. So we've got 1 cylinder. I've just used cylinders here, and this is kind of easy. In the game of Towers of Hanoi, that 1 disk is free to move to the end position. There's no other disks on top of it, and it's 1 move, and the penguins counted that. So let's increase that to 2 disks and run this simulation again. We build our tower now. We've got 2 disks there, and the penguin's going to count for us. The other thing you notice is that we're kind of defying gravity here. I'm just moving the disks horizontally, just saves on some lines of code. But that took 3 moves to do. We had to move this yellow disk to the offset first before we could move the disk below it. Let's try that with 3 disks now and run this simulation. Okay. So we might be starting to notice some patterns here. The largest disk on the bottom only moves once. Every second turn, this top one is moving to a new location. And I just want you to notice that how far did it move? You might want to run that simulation again or rewind the video again and think about, there was 3 disks here. How far did that first disk move in its first move? And then how many spots did it actually travel through on its next move? Okay, so let's watch this again with fresh eyes. We're doing 4 disks now, and we know that the bottom disk only has to move once when it is free to move. But I want you to focus on what's happening in particular with the very top disk here. We've got an even number of disks, and it moved once, then it moves again to the next location. And then, even though it seems to move across 2 there, I like to think of that as, well, if it just disappeared and come back here, it would be 1 move. And that top disk is moving just 1 position each time. Okay, we could set up a modular system, so modular 3, so that would return to the first one here, and so on. This is just things to think about. Perhaps if you want to build a better program. All right. So there's a simulation. I think it's quite achievable for Year 7 and 8 students to program something like this in COSPACES. Of course, they're going to need a little bit of help with that, but I'm sure, and there's a lot of skills they need to learn along the way, but I just see it as a really good way to bring the mathematics to life and allow them to use the mathematics in a meaningful way. Okay, thank you.